Hi, I'm Rhett Power, and it is great to be back here at Global Impact Forum. It's been great, a great week, great discussions so far during the forum, and we're going to have another one right now. Now, I'm Rhett Power from Forbes, and for the next 40 minutes, we're going to be talking about technology enabling sustainability. And I have tons of questions around this very issue, and I've got a great panel today. I've got Hilary, who is Vice President of Customer Strategy and Technology at Nokia. And I've got Mike Witt, who's Chief Sustainability Officer at Northrop Grumman. Guys, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rhett. Pleasure to be with you and with you, Hilary.
Yeah, absolutely. You as well, Mike, and also you, Rhett. Pleasure to be here at the event.
Thank you. And for you, those of you listening and watching today, please share your thoughts and your questions on social media using our hashtag Webit, WEBIT, hashtag in front of that, of course. So I wanted to just kind of go back and forth with questions today with each one of you. And please, as the discussion progresses, I think we're going to probably both answer, get into the questions for even the ones I've got for each one of you specifically. But Hilary, I'm going to start with you as we talk about 5G, and we know that many countries yet don't even have 5G. We're starting to hear about 6G, and so what in the world is 6G, and what is the difference? How is that different than 5G? Because
sure, that's a great question.
Because that's supposed to be a game changer.
Yeah, and 5G is indeed early days still. We have about 1,000 devices available on the market now, which is always a big factor in adoption. But there are still some countries that haven't even allocated spectrum yet, or they're just in the process, like Brazil and India, and other countries like South Korea, Japan, China, Finland, US, and Netherlands all started very early and they're fully deployed. And so people are exploring all kinds of interesting use cases. They're both technically a set of standards for communication networks defined by an organization called 3GPP. And they're standards that are an ever-growing ecosystem of chip hardware, software vendors, device manufacturers, service providers, and more all need to agree to, which then allows seamless global communications. All success for networking requires this ecosystem of devices and equipment. And it really actually requires a whole ecosystem of standards groups like IEEE, IETF, MAC, and more. And I want to reiterate that because a lot of times people think 5G is a technology, but it's actually more useful to think of it as a standards-based ecosystem. And that's important when we talk more about sustainability. At a high level, what 5G does, right, is enable this 10x improvement in bandwidth latency and the ability to connect things. But when you look at 6G, it's again a 3GPP standard, but it's part of a broader ecosystem again. It won't affect people until about 2030. So you have 5G rolling out now, 5G advanced in 2025, starting to roll out, and then 6G. It's different because from the beginning, we're defining key value indicators, not just KPIs. So sustainability, trustworthiness, and digital inclusion are all built into the research that we're doing now and built into the use cases that we're designing for the 2030s. So again, we'll look for another 10x improvement in capacity, latency, and connectivity, but also 6G will aim to create a zero carbon footprint networks where every aspect of the network operations is designed to minimize or offset CO2 emissions. And not only will 6G enable lower cost per bit and faster connectivity, but it'll also be able to analyze collected data to turn off components and scale down capacity when demand is low. So energy efficiency is built into the standard. And I just want to finish off that two main paradigm shifts are the completely cloud native architecture, which includes the RAN, which brings a lot of agility and scalability, and it allows you to move things and distribute them differently because it's more like an extended computer network. And the second thing is the native use of AI for dealing with increased complexity. And that's what's going to help us also a lot with the energy consumption. So those things are all starting to deploy in 5G Advanced. One other thing I just want to highlight is digital twinning. I hope you all know what digital twinning is, and I'm guessing so a lot of you don't. That's a really important thing that's brought around by 6G. So it's really the essence of what I think of as a meaningful metaverse and what we call digital physical fusion. It's not just about gaming, it's about digital twins of your body that can model the impact of a specific cancer therapy on you personally, or enable a city planner. Imagine you're walking around a planned renovation site as a city planner, and you can actually see the impact of proposed changes, including impact on foot traffic, bicycle traffic, crime, environment, energy use, all of that combining data and AI from a multitude of sources with digital twins that you can visually see of your existing and proposed plans, all streamed through your smart glasses. I hope that helps.
It does, absolutely. That's fascinating. And you said inclusive, and Mike, I'll come back in just I'll get to you in a second, but I want to follow up on something, Hilary. You talked about inclusiveness. What do you mean by that with 6G?
There are a lot of different things about inclusiveness. So as we build each technology, we're designing to make it able to reach more people more cheaply. Inclusiveness is partly about digital connectivity for all. It's partly about ensuring, for example, one of the things that we just actually did we've helped found this Women in Telecom Advanced Research. One of the things we're really targeting is diversity in things like AI research. Why is that important? We need inclusion and diversity in all of the AI research, especially because you don't want to build in a whole bunch of bias. So diversity, we all know this is just, it's fact-based anymore. Diversity creates better outcomes. It creates better thinking. And diversity is not a gender thing. It's about diversity of all kinds of things. So inclusion and diversity are really important in designing this new set of networks, because it'll be important to defining how usable they are, I think. And I'm sure Mike has something to add to that.
Well, Mike, I wanted to ask you, we talk about sustainability all the time, right? And it's a word that you hear thrown around quite a bit at conferences and in the world that we live in. Why is sustainability important to technology development?
Thanks, Rhett. And again, it's a pleasure to be here with both you and Hilary today. And, on this topic of sustainability, really, sustainability is all about making sure that the resources can endure for a long term and that we're not depleting them faster than they can be generated. This applies in a number of different ways. It implies an environmental, social, and governance elements of what we call ESG, and it's really inherent to sustainability. And so I can break that down a little bit further for you. And on the environmental side, this really includes resources we use like water and materials used in technology manufacturing and things like emissions and waste generated. On the social side, this is also a key component of our strategy, and it includes making sure that people have what they need to preform and succeed, and that a business has that diverse talent needed for success. If we want to be the best, we need to attract, retain, and develop the best. And then on the governance side, this really includes and really focuses on how we operate. It includes basic compliance for operation, but also how we go beyond what we must do and how we define what we should do. For instance, having our values as a company that guide us as employees and as a company, values around doing the right thing and doing what we promise and committing to shared success, and really doing this with the pioneering spirit that we all value and appreciate here at Northrop Grumman. So I guess in summary, all of these elements add up to a successful technology development platform. You can only create the best and the latest technology if you have the resources to make it, the best, brightest, and the most diverse people to think about the problem that the technology will solve, and the processes in place to make sure that the technology is being made correctly, both for the business and for the planet.
So one quick follow-up to that, how is Northrop Grumman thinking about sustainability? How is it affecting, do you consider Northrop Grumman a technology company or what, talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, as I think about Northrop Grumman, absolutely a technology company. We focus on defining the art of the possible. And what we do is we harness the power of technology. So the individuals that call Northrop Grumman home are bringing a skill set, and a diverse skill set at that, focused on technology development in a number of different domains. We have an aeronautics business, we have a mission systems business, we have a defense business, and we have a space business. And so various domains, technology converging, and we develop solutions that also support the sustainability efforts in the communities where we live and work. And so it's this harnessing of technology that I think gives us a leg up and really affords us the opportunity to do what we do, working collaboratively with our partners and the various stakeholders, whether it's the Department of Defense, NASA, or NOAA, and then having the privilege to serve and operate in the communities where we both live and we work. And so this is really what makes Northrop Grumman special. And I think that really helps to serve and to galvanize the approach that we take as it relates to sustainability and the implementation of a business strategy that is focused on sustainability.
I understand. Thank you. Hilary, your CEO often says a lot. It always says that there's no green without digital. What does that mean? And I know you hinted on this a little bit, but how will 5G and 6G play a role in that?
So there are two major topics there. And the first is the way in which all the standards definition and our implementation enable a lot more capacity and digitalization with less power consumption per bit. And then implementation of AI into the radios and systems to enable energy savings and so forth in the operational environment. So that's one piece. And we invest actually pretty heavily in silicon as well as AI to ensure we also continue to move the needle on power consumption across the network infrastructure. So we have in our radios, in our routing platforms, we have silicon that's persistently, each generation is reducing power consumption another 70 to 75%. And we've been developing new cooling systems because of course, radio sites love to eat a lot of energy, as do most things. So we've been developing new energy reduction base-based systems and so forth. We're also using AI, and I'll give you one example to really reduce power consumption. So we have a large mobile network in China. We deployed our AI-based solution there across multiple vendors, which not only put unused elements on standby or shut them off, but actually manages cooling, which is the most power-hungry component of any radio site. So, and just to give you a stat, it's been estimated that 20% of all global warming will be due to the gases emitted from air conditioning by the year 2050. That's largely due to expected increased use of air conditioning as temperatures continue to rise, but it's also something we need to try and manage in our own domains. So modernization of mobile networks combined with AI for predictive energy management can save about 70% energy per site, which is important because we're going to have more sites. We know that there's going to be demand. The bigger impact, though, is how 5G and 6G enable digitalization of industry, business, and government, and all of our personal lives, which are increasingly blended, of course, with work. Digitalization is critical to make industries more sustainable, for reducing waste, for using our resources more efficiently, as Mike talked about, and for increased productivity. And I want to just give you a couple of examples. In the energy sector, digitalization can help wind farm operators automate offshore wind farms, which allows them to operate more productively. These are things that we're actually working with people on. In agriculture, adoption of digital technology increases yields, reduces costs, and cuts water use, which is really important. So we have one estimate from Bell Labs, Nokia Bell Labs, that estimates if 25% of all farms adopted precision farming by 2030, you could get increases of up to 300 million tons per year of crops, a reduction in farming costs of about 100 billion a year, and a reduction of wastewater by up to 150 billion cubic meters per year. So there's smart manufacturing. We expect about 10 to 20% gains. So there's a whole bunch of things that 6G and 5G allow, which enable us to digitalize as a society and really be able to handle the increased consumption we want without increasing our energy use, as an example.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What for you? And I'll come back in, and Mike, I'll be there in just a second. I got another question for you too. For what are the main roadblocks here, though, Hilary, for roadblocks and enablers to that vision? I mean, what's your view on that?
So I'm going to highlight four. First, fragmentation versus acceleration of standards. Standards, again, for communications are only meaningful when they're global. And we see a lot of threats at the moment for fragmentation of standards and increased nationalization. In India, for example, there was a serious push to define a separate 5G standard. We managed to, everyone got together and managed to convince us that it's not a great idea. But standards, as I've been pointing out, are the backbone for defining efficiency as a society and how to accomplish this green and digital. And the second roadblock is nationalistic, and it's related and differentiated security standards and requirements. So it's reducing scarce R&D funds because companies, especially hard hit, are small businesses and entrepreneurs. They're forced to spend a huge amount of money on complex security requirements and audits that are different in every single country. We operate in 120 countries plus, and if we have to do completely different audit structures in each country, you can imagine for a small business how hard that would be. It's really hard for us. Third is prioritization of research and availability of R&D investment. It can be an enabler, it can be a roadblock. Let's see how the economies go. We're hoping for no global recession and continued investment, but that can be a major driver of acceleration or deceleration. And finally, digital investment, especially in skills, not just technology. That's an area that can make or break the speed with which we move as a world towards green and digital. I can't talk about skills. I hope that helps. There's a lot of others, but that's a start.
No, we could talk about that all day, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, talk about how, with defense and national security evolving, how is Northrop Grumman utilizing technology to adapt to changing sustainability needs?
So this really starts with customer focus, and we're following what our customers have laid out in their plans as a guide. Independent of guides, we have identified ways to be sustainability leaders in the past, the present, and the future. Within this ESG space, we have key ways that we have utilized technology to better our plant, our society, and our businesses. And let me just share a few examples of what we're doing on the environmental side, the social side, and the governance side of things, kind of taking a full look across this ESG spectrum. On the environmental side, for over 60 years, Northrop Grumman has been building spacecraft, including what some I think is really recognized Landsat satellites. These contribute to our understanding of the natural world, from catastrophic weather events to pollution to the impacts of climate change. Our technological innovation in space, as well as the information that our spacecraft provide, this is essential to our understanding more about our world and our place in the solar system. In 2021, we completed an installation at one of our major facilities of a 1.1 megawatt on-site solar array at our facility in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. And this really helped us to explore on-site solar opportunities. And we're doing this at over 15 other Northrop Grumman campuses. As a result, this really enables us to move forward with various renewable energy projects in 2022, and it's really a good kickstart into what we're going to do beyond, because it puts us on our way to achieving one of our key environmental sustainability goals focused on renewable energy. And so finally, we're looking at ways to apply technology in parallel for conservation and defense through our Technology for Conservation program. Tech for Conservation, what it really seeks to do is pair Northrop Grumman engineers with conservation organizations to solve some of the toughest challenges facing our planet. A really good example of this is our project in the what we call the Oyster Monitoring Challenge. This is where engineers created a technology and a system to help the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, one of our key partners, to plant, grow, and monitor the oyster population that positively impacts the water quality of Chesapeake Bay. So that's on the environmental side. On the social side, we maintain an intense focus on employee health, safety, and well-being. We review our data on safety incidents and other related events regularly to identify and address various injury trends and the type and location in order for us to take necessary action to mitigate any additional safety concerns so that safety remains one of our utmost priorities. We also make sure that employees don't have unneeded barriers to their job. One example pertains to an employee who is hard of hearing. He has difficulty understanding colleagues who wear masks. And so what we did was we outfitted him with a device that helps to transmit sound directly to his hearing aid to help him hear more comfortably and, more importantly, safely do his job. That's the social side. And now on the governance side, in 2021, we launched an online, more interactive ethics refresher training course. Now, everybody has their training courses at work. The degree of interactiveness of this is really, I think, what makes this special. The course covers our standards of business conduct, social media, time charging consistency, quality, insider threats, conflict of interest, and ethical decision making. These printed training materials are made available to manufacturing and production employees from around the Northrop Grumman facilities who may not have access to work on a computer. And in addition to that, training has also been translated into various other languages, again, to make sure that our employees can operate in a safe and efficient manner, and understanding what's being expected of them and understanding what's available by way of training material. So that really summarizes from an environmental and social governance perspectives what it is we're doing here in Northrop Grumman in order to ensure that as technology continues to evolve, that we can adapt to those changing needs and do so in a very sustainable fashion.
You know, one thing I was surprised, Mike, that you didn't say was, and I think it's really fascinating, is Northrop Grumman's diverse workforce, and how has that really helped you in the company towards on this path of sustainability?
Yeah, well, this diverse workforce, when we talk about our key stakeholders, our key stakeholders being our customers, our investors, our employees, and let me focus a little bit more on the employees, and then maybe I'll touch on our investors, because I've already spoken to what we're hearing from our customers. But on the employee front, I happen to be a very active recruiter, and I can't go onto a college campus without having a conversation or multiple conversations with extremely bright individuals. This is a generation that's the next generation of decision makers and thought leaders. And the conversations that they want to have are, yes, I want to become part of an organization that values technology and technology development, but they also want the overlay of sustainability. And they ask the question, what are you doing, Mike, or what are you doing, Northrop Grumman, to ensure that everything you do is done in the most sustainable fashion possible? And so these are the conversations that, of course, as the Chief Sustainability Officer, I delight in having, because I'm able to share and provide some perspectives that I think they want to hear and better understand as it relates to the potential opportunities that they would have at a company like Northrop Grumman. On the shareholder and the investor side, I've had the opportunity to meet with many of our largest investors here at Northrop Grumman, and these are firms and organizations that are very, very astute when it comes to sustainable business practices and asking us the tough questions around, you made a commitment, how did you do? And what are you doing going forward? And so going back to, say, 2015, when we made our 2020 sustainability commitments, we talk about greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and what we committed to and what we achieved are two very different things. And saying in a different way, we committed to a 30% reduction, and we actually hit 44% from that time period. When it comes to water, because we have operations in a number of areas around our country where water is a precious resource, and so we focus very intently on water and water use reduction. And we had a target of 20% and exceeded that target. And then waste is another opportunity for us. And we feel that pushing waste into a landfill, you lose the value of that waste and you lose out on opportunities to make your operations more efficient. And so we had a target of diverting 70% of our waste away from landfills, and came just a fraction of a percent, 69.7% to be exact, from that target. But in my mind, a resounding success in our company. This is the foundation we've built. And then just this past Earth Day in April of 2022, we announced our next generation targets, which really picks up and builds on this solid foundation that we have. And it allows us to really rally the amazing and resounding support that we're getting from employees, both current and future employees, and the leadership that we have from Kathy Warden, our CEO, our executive leadership team, a very engaged board of directors who all see this as the path that we will continue to travel on, and it's a sustainable path, and it's a successful business path, bringing together all these various aspects of how we do work and how we do our jobs, and how we're going to continue to bring values to society through what Northrop Grumman does.
Thank you, Mike. And I think that's a great question for you, Hilary, as well. Is what is Nokia thinking about? I think companies today have to, as Mike was talking about, have to be responsive to your customers, and you have to be responsive to your incoming employees and your current employees. And I think we see that society and people are really pushing companies to talk about sustainability, to talk about diversity and inclusion, as you were talking about earlier, Hilary. Mm-hmm. So talk about Nokia's position here, and how do you answer those questions?
Absolutely. So first of all, we look at sustainability really broadly, and this is in line with what Mike is talking about. And I really encourage you and hope that you'll look at our People and Planet report, which we publish every year online. We've been publishing a corporate responsibility report every year since 1999. and it evolves. So every year we challenge ourselves a little bit more and we become a little more woke. So if you search on Nokia, People and Planet, you'll find it. It has 4 dimensions that we really focus on. And the first is improving lives. So our economic impact, connecting people, digitalizing industry, supporting innovation, university collaboration, social programs. The second is focusing on combating climate change, including our own targets on both handprint and footprint, how to decarbonize our value chain, and circularity, as Mike talked about, right? How do you reduce waste and change your whole pattern? The third thing we focus on is integrity, which we take really seriously. And it has a lot of dimensions, from ethical conduct and corporate governance to anti-corruption. We operate all over the world: human rights, responsible sourcing, including materials traceability, data privacy, and security, and so on. And finally, there's our people, which includes diversity and inclusion. It includes health and safety, fair working terms, and all of that. So we have a really comprehensive set of metrics that we report on and we track, including our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And you will find literally 5 pages of how we performed on various environmental metrics since 2018, all audited in that report. It's not all rosy. I wish we could claim all the stats that Mike has. Some things are going up, some are going down. We're hitting targets, others are more difficult, but we're measuring it, and that's how we start to change it, right? We've already committed to reducing our emissions 50% across our value chain, including our own operations, products in use by others, logistics, and final assembly supplier factories by 2030. And those commitments are approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative, so SBTI, in line with the Paris Agreement to limit global warming to 1.5 C. With 90% of our emissions coming from the customer use of our products, that's why I was talking about earlier, we invest so hard to improve the energy efficiency of our products so that our customers can actually achieve that energy improvement, because that's really challenging for us. And most recently, we announced we now target to achieve 100% purchased electricity from renewable sources by 2025 to power all our offices, R&D labs, and factories, which is a big ask, but we're really intent to hit that. And last, I would just say we've been named one of the world's most ethical companies again this year for the 5th year in a row. We have, like Mike talked about, some phenomenal training. I have to say the training that we do is really impactful. And we're also starting to work with our customers on defining the key challenges in ESG and how we can collectively work to impact them. So we've been engaging our customers in a new kind of way around that. And I think that's important as well.
And this is a question for both of you, so jump in. Do you find that your customers now are looking at these, or asking these same questions before they decide to do business with you? Are you seeing that kind of on a global level?
You want to go ahead, Mike?
Yeah, we've had sustainability plans and goals in place for ourselves for over a decade. And I think being in this space where we operate very closely and to collaborate with departments like the U.S. Department of Defense, the NASA, and NOAA, as I mentioned before, they now have their own goals in place. And so more specifically, the U.S. Department of Defense late last year announced through their climate adaptation plan some very specific goals and targets. And these have helped to further show us how we can apply the work that we have done in sustainability to help our customers achieve their goals. And in the past, the defense focus, especially when it comes to the environment, had been on shoreline resiliency and really focused on protecting coastal bases. But that has really expanded to other areas to include things like fuel efficiency, the utilization, or I should say the development of, and then utilization of electric vehicles, resource security, when you think about our supply chain and the supply chain challenges that we have and the availability of resources, that has been a significant opportunity for society in general, but especially in this space where, again, we're working collaboratively with our customers. And then it's really the technology that can help our customers to meet this expanded need as we anticipate those needs both now and well into the future.
So, but are the customers pushing you to see what you're doing for sustainability? Is that a question that they're asking you before they do business with you?
It is. We have very frequent conversations with my counterpart in the Department of Defense. They don't have written in the requirements as it relates to the products that we sell, but those are the conversations we're having. How can we define, or how can they define what those requirements should look like based on the technology that may be available? Technology that, of course, needs to meet and exceed the performance needs. I mean, we're a defense company, and so we're helping the Department of Defense to promote and to preserve the freedoms that we all enjoy. So that performance has to be there, but it's how we get there. What are the materials of construction? How can we how can we assess and perform the processes that we have been doing for over years, if not decades, and do so in a more sustainable fashion by focusing on things like energy efficiency and how we utilize fuels, and if there's alternative ways to do things, and if it helps us manage our footprint and handprint, as Hilary mentioned a few seconds ago, then that's a different way of doing things. It helps, again, meet the needs of a department like the Department of Defense that, again, is very active in helping us to want to better develop and to implement those solutions that help them and help us and help society move forward.
Yeah. Hilary?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, until about a year and a half ago, I was running our business in Nordics, Baltics, and Benelux, and I was signing 5G contracts with customers. And I can tell you that I also signed circularity agreements with them on joint targets for circularity, joint targets on emissions. And it varies around the world depending on the country and the customer and what their local environment focuses. But we see a fair number of customers really focused on this issue now. We just started this a new way of engaging with customers in an advisory capacity around ESG, and the take-up is amazing. People are extremely keen to engage that way. So absolutely, it's a question, and it's a question from shareholders. It's a question from all stakeholders. It's not just customers. I think all stakeholders are asking good questions. And I think, as Mike said earlier, I'm hearing smarter and smarter questions and better educated questions. So it's not enough to know what your emissions are. You really need to be an expert.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd love to hear from both of you how, some advice for smaller companies. How can you take these initiatives, these types of initiatives, and I mean, I think both of you sort of hinted at this is a profitable way to think, and it's the right way to think, but it's also a profitable way to think. How can smaller companies take sort of these kind of goals and from intention really to action, to impact? You guys have any thoughts?
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, it's all about setting bold targets. If you need a signpost, you need a milepost, and you need to set a target out there so that not just our employees, but those that we work with in the value chain, our customers, our suppliers, and everybody who is part of this collaboration, they understand the direction that we're going. And so my advice, set targets that unlock the full extent of the creativity, the strengths, and, as I like to say, the pioneering spirit that exists at a company like Northrop Grumman. Setting targets not only gives companies a finish line to keep in view, but it also serves to promote clarity on how those goals are going to be achieved and how we will report on our progress against those goals. Through goals, companies will keep themselves focused and their stakeholders to do the same, as I mentioned a second ago, kind of a value chain view. Goals also serve to inspire and to motivate employees to have a stake and ownership in the company and where we're going. They're not something that should be developed and enacted from the top down. Really, true impact comes from when each and every member of a business understands the goals and their part in reaching them. The way I like to say it is each and every employee should have a line of sight from where they are in the organization directly to where the company is going on its sustainability journey. And one of the previous questions, Rhett, you had asked, and one of my responses was about the next generation of thought leaders and decision makers. And those that are in college or in trade school right now, maybe even still in grade school, they're thinking about how they want to make an impact on this planet. And the degree to which you can help those individuals understand where a company is going and the role that they will play, that's how you really generate excitement and enthusiasm around these targets. And one final point, and this is really around alignment of the goals with external considerations. Because, for example, our goal of net zero operations emissions by 2035 aligns to a societal goal to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, as Hilary mentioned a few minutes ago. And this is with the intent to drive global greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, as has been very, I think, effectively stated as a target by the IPCC in its special report. Companies cannot set arbitrary and self-limited goals. They must align to something greater to have that true and positive impact to really enable how society moves forward and establish the role that a company can play in helping society to achieve those overarching targets.
So it's almost a responsibility for a leadership in a company. Oh, and I'll come back to you in a second, but it's almost a responsibility, is what you're saying, of that company leadership to sort of set those bold objectives and say, this is how we're going to do it and why we're going to do it.
Yeah, and here at Northrop Grumman, that is a responsibility that we've taken very, very seriously, from conversations that I have directly with my leader, the CEO of the company, Kathy Warden, the conversations that we have with our business leaders across the company, again, independent of domain and area of technological focus. Sustainability is one of those capabilities and one of the strengths that underpins everything we do and serves as a significant component of the foundation upon which we build everything from our technology development strategy and making sure our innovation pipeline is robust to ensuring that we have a diverse pipeline of talent, and that pipeline of talent feels that when coming to Northrop Grumman, that they can bring their whole selves to work, and they have all the skills and all the tools and all the capabilities in order to succeed and help meet the needs of what the customers have said that they want, and help to deliver that sustainable future that society, frankly, expects from leaders in companies like Northrop Grumman and Nokia.
Hilary, go ahead.
So I think Mike hit on most of it pretty good. You asked about for startups and smaller companies, and I think there's a couple of other dimensions to think about. So first of all, and you mentioned about profitability. So as Mike mentioned, right, if you're a startup or you're a small company, it's all about your talent. And attracting great talent means having some vision around this. And at the same time, you can tap into that talent, and you can tap into the freebie resources of college students and so forth that are to learn how to really measure and start thinking about how you advance against a little further than the target, right? How do you establish yourself as a leader in these areas? And I think that's, if I were in a startup, that's what I'd be thinking about. How do I lead, not just achieve? And how do I get my ecosystem? Because the other thing is, typically, if you're a small company or a startup, you're in an ecosystem. How do you align with your ecosystem and get them to help you? Because it is a tremendous amount. I mean, you need people who do this full time and understand all the changing regulation definitions and so on. So I would get help from my ecosystem. I would get help from college students. I'd get help anywhere I could, but I would absolutely make it a priority because it is a point of differentiation.
Great. So guys, thank you. This has been really fascinating. I appreciate the candor and and sort of laying out your idea on sustainability and how important that is to progress, to smaller, medium-sized companies, probably people listening today who are not part of big organizations like you are, but sharing some advice to even the smaller and smaller businesses out here that are listening and watching. And thank you for being here with us at Global Impact Forum. This has been a great discussion. There are going to be many more during the forum, so please stay tuned in. And if you have questions, don't forget to share those questions on social media. Use our hashtag Webit, WEBIT, with a hashtag course. And thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back to the studio.